Hey everyone, my name is Brad Dunn and I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Whispir, and today I'm really excited to show you our communications intelligence platform. Now, Whispir is a really simple and easy way to send automated and engaging communications to your customers, and it's really simple to get started. So all I'm going to do is log into my demo account and show you exactly what would happen for a first-time customer. So here we're taken to what's called the dashboard, and this is a really simple way of introducing customers to the platform. We can see some documentation here, which is really all about helping customers find the information they need to learn how to use the application. And over here, we also have an option for customers to see what's in our latest release. It's really important as we keep building and adding functionality to the application that customers can find the information about what those releases look like. Now, over to the right-hand side, there are these 4 simple steps that a new customer would go through. Everything from importing your contacts all the way down to finding out how efficient and effective your message communications are. So by far the most common place for a brand new customer to start is to really import some contact information. Now, there are a whole bunch of different ways customers will do this. We have a contacts API where users can upload their contact information from an existing application like a CRM system. But for first-time users, what we see more commonly is just being able to import a CSV file full of recipient information. Now, I have a little file here that's got about 200 contacts in it, and I'm going to show you how it works. So you simply drag the file onto the application and then click this button down here that says Continue to Map. Now, the reason we do this step is because sometimes in CSV files, customers will have a different word for a particular type of content. So for example, in Australia, we might call a mobile phone number, but in the US, it might be called a cell number. So this is a way to really marry up those two headings to make sure that all the information is correct before we import the contacts. We just click Continue to Complete down here, and then all we do is click on the contacts and we can see all of the contact information we've just imported. Now, if you wanted to edit the contact information, maybe there was a mistake in the CSV file, you simply edit it here, change whatever information you like, and then all of your contact information is going to be correct. Now, as you start using the application more, you're going to really want to group individuals into different kinds of cohorts, and we call those lists. You can think of these as just a really simple way of bundling a bunch of recipients together that you might want to message for a particular reason. Now, you could do this by region or a particular event, but in this case, let's just assume that we're going to group everyone from Western Australia into its own list. We create a new list here, and then we simply add the contacts that we want who are living in Western Australia to that particular list. There you go. Now we've added everybody who's from Western Australia into that list. So if we've got an event over there, we can make sure that it's really simple. We just pull up the distribution list when we want to send them a message. Now the next thing I'm going to do is show you how to send a very simple SMS message to somebody. Now there are 2 different ways of sending messages outside of the platform currently. You can do a bulk SMS or some kind of campaign-based message, which is really where you want to send a particular piece of content and you want to send it now. The second is to use workflows, which we'll cover a bit later, but this is really about sending messages under certain sorts of conditions. So if this happens, then send that kind of message. For now though, I'm just going to show you how to send a very basic SMS just to give you an introduction to how the process works. So inside the Messages tab, we click the Create Message button in the top right hand side, and then we would just really want to choose who are we sending this message to. Now, we can send from a particular distribution list, we can choose from a specific contact, or we can just enter an ad hoc phone number in like this. Next, we're going to choose the particular piece of content. So content is really what kind of channel or what kind of things we're going to attach to the message. There are actually 4 different pieces of content that you can choose. Email, SMS. You can also attach what's called a linked web page, which we're going to cover in a minute. You can also attach WhatsApp as a channel as well. But for now, we're just going to choose the SMS option to show you how it works. When you get to the Create SMS page, there's one thing you want to leverage, and that's called variables. Variables are just a way for you to insert dynamic information from distribution lists or information that's stored inside the system instead of you having to hard code it every time. Now, I'm going to send a quick message using variables, and I'm going to send a message about being running late for a meeting. This is just a really simple example of how you can use variables to make sure that the message is much more dynamic and you can really drive engagement, especially when you're importing variables that contain things like customer information or purchasing preferences. That's all you need to do to send an SMS. We click the send button and off it goes. All of your messages are stored in the sent messages list, and if you ever want to return to them, you can do that here. The next thing I'm going to do is show you a little bit more about this linked web page feature that we saw a moment ago. So a linked web page is really just the ability to attach a message that's made up of HTML content to another kind of communication channel like an SMS. So inside of the SMS, what we want to do is get a user to open the SMS, click on a link, and then arrive at the web page, which is full of really rich and dynamic content that just isn't available to us on things like SMS and email. Now to do that, all we have to do is use the web link variable inside of the message somewhere. Next, I'm going to create the linked web page component of this message. Now, like I mentioned before, a linked web page is really just a piece of HTML content where we can modify it much like we could any website. The beauty of doing this is it allows us to create messages that leverage the power of HTML, where we can customize pretty much anything we want and send that like we would a normal message. What's good also is that Whispir will constantly release templates that are really useful for customers for certain sorts of events. So if you take something like COVID-19, when this first started, we created a bunch of templates that customers could use ready to go that they could just insert. It had all the styling, it had all the branding, it had everything that the customers would need, designed in a particular way that would drive engagement. This means they don't always have to create messages themselves, they can leverage templates that we have for them. Once you've created the linked web page, they're linked together by that web link, and then when you send it, what will happen is we'll tie those two together so that we can actually track users who have clicked on the linked web page. This is probably one of the best ways of getting customers really engaged with your content, because you can leverage the power of things like SMS, which has really high open rates, but also kind of use the power of HTML content, which can be really rich and engaging. The next thing I'm going to do is show you how to send an automated message using workflows. Now, workflows is really a way for sending messages or sending forms under certain sorts of conditions. So if something happens, then perform some kind of action. Inside of here, you'll see all of your saved workflows. I'm going to edit this one over here on the left-hand side called the Sila event invitation. This is a good example of a workflow that's pretty simple to follow. And all workflows start with some kind of trigger at the top. A trigger is just what gets the process started, and a manual trigger is where we click this button and that starts the process. You can see the first step is a web form is sent via email. I'll click on this and show you what it means. A web form is kind of like a web page that we've sent before, but it really allows us to ask questions, which we can then subsequently use to fire off additional messaging off the back of it. So you can see down here, we've got questions like, will you be attending? Do you have any dietary requirements or have any allergies? And on the right-hand side, we can see some additional inputs that we can add to the thing. So we can add a text input, we can ask different questions like how old you are, and we can save this form and use those questions and answers further on down into the workflow. What's particularly special about workflows is the sheer amount of flexibility in them. You can pretty much design these to automate all kinds of business processes within the business. For example, you could have a particular onboarding workflow for new staff where you send them a message asking them what kind of laptop they want. Do they want a PC or a Mac? And maybe under certain sorts of conditions, because the internal IT team provisions all of the PCs, one particular path sends them a message to give them all the information, whereas if someone selects a Mac, we send those details directly to the Apple Store. You can use these workflows for pretty much anything you like, but in this particular event case, what we can see on the left is that when someone has submitted the form, we send them a particular message with some RSVP details. If we click on Content, review the email, we can see that a confirmation email is actually sent to the recipient. On the right hand side, if the web form isn't submitted, you can see that we actually wait 7 days, probably because we're really patient, and then we send them a follow-up SMS, which presumably is a way of reminding them that they need to RSVP to the event. I'll show you how easy it is to customize. Now, in the original web form, we asked about dietary requirements, but let's try and put that information to work by adding a branch that says if someone has a particular kind of dietary requirement, let's email the executive chef to let them know. Here, what we do is we add an if condition. We select a variable like, will they be attending? Because we want to make sure they're actually coming to the event. And then we want to add another variable which says dietary requirements, and we make sure that they've selected vegan. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to send an SMS. We're going to send it to the executive chef, and we're going to let them know that the person actually has a dietary requirement that is vegan. This allows us to make sure we can automate the entire event and make sure that if there's any particular kinds of people who have special dietary requirements, the chef knows exactly what to do when he needs to do it. What we've tried to do with workflows is also create some pre-built workflow templates that can be used by businesses to really automate processes that are quite common for new users. So you can see down here below, we've got a bunch of templates, everything from staff feedback forms, which can be used like a stand-in NPS survey. What's good about this particular type of form is it allows us to send different kinds of feedback to department heads. So let's say you have a big call center or a bunch of retail operations, we can capture particular types of negative feedback and make sure they go to the corresponding managers in the right way. We also have what's called starter surveys. These can be things that are used like simple surveys that are used to capture information. Here's one, for instance, that's all about product market fit, which is a particular type of survey that software companies send to work out whether their product is actually hitting the mark with a market. Now, as you start to use the application more and more, you're going to have messages coming in and out of the platform all day, and you're going to want to know what's actually happening to those messages. Are they working? Are they engaging for the customers? And this is where the reporting side of the application comes into the equation. This is what we call the Activity Insights report, and it's a really simple event-based view of the world. Up here, you can see all the different kinds of events that are available, and you can see whether they're coming in or coming out. This can be a really interesting report, especially if you have lots of different departments using Whispir, as it allows you to see the kind of volume running through the application. The second report you can take a look at is what's called the Engagement Report. The engagement report is a very, very simple, large-scale overview of where you can really see things at a campaign level. Here we can add a bunch of different messages into the equation, and we can see things like the percentage difference between things like sent and replied. This is an easy way to find out the overall efficacy of the marketing campaigns that you're sending and whether you're getting the kind of engagement you want at an aggregate level. Lastly, the recipient report allows us to go that next level down, all the way to the recipients. Let's take a look at this mail newsletter that's gone out. Now, the recipient report is really all about working out how engaged people are down to the individual level. Now, Whispir's come up with its own way of viewing engagement. It's really all about working out whether someone is engaged with a message, not just whether they opened it. After all, we all open messages that we have no interest in whatsoever. So Whispir came up with a totally different way of thinking about messaging engagement. As part of this, the AI and the data team came up with what we call the engagement score, which is visible here down at the recipient level and here as an average for all of the content that's gone out. The idea is we feed this thing various signals that build up a nuanced view of just how engaged people are with a particular piece of content. We can see this all on the right-hand side for individuals, and what this does is it allows us to track the engagement of individual users based on particular kinds of content and particular kinds of channels over time, and build up these really sophisticated views of individuals and really what makes them engage with particular kinds of messages. The engagement score really is at the heart of what we're trying to do, which is to predict who's likely to engage with a particular piece of content before we actually send them the message. And all of this information is contained inside the recipient report. One thing that larger enterprises will typically do is connect their applications to Whispir to really leverage things like our workflow engine or contact API and send engaging messages. And the best way to do that is with our API, which is available for all customers that use the application. And we have a really good range of sophisticated API documentation that allows the developers to connect their applications, understand how the API works, and really send messages quickly without too much fuss. You can see here, all you have to do is to generate an API key, and then you can use that API key to connect your enterprise applications directly to Whispir and start sending messages. This can be one of the most powerful ways of leveraging all of the intelligence inside the Whispir platform with the existing information you keep in your business applications. And that's it for the tour of the application. And don't forget, if you have any questions, you can simply click on this little icon on the right hand side and chat to anyone on the product or the support team, and they'll help you get started. If you have any questions for me, let me know.